Over the past couple of months, we've heard concerns over missed cleanup deadlines at the Idaho National Laboratory in eastern Idaho. Those missed deadlines center around construction of the Integrated Waste Treatment Unit, a unique effort to treat high-level radioactive liquid waste buried several decades ago. That treatment unit has to be up and running if the Department of Energy wants to bring in 50 spent fuel rods from commercial power plants. Kunz has more.
Once called the centerpiece of the Idaho Cleanup Project, the one-of-a-kind Integrated Waste Treatment Unit is now more than 2 years behind schedule. It's also directly responsible for several missed deadlines, as mandated by the 1995 Settlement Agreement, a legally binding agreement between the state of Idaho and the Department of Energy.
I think our biggest failure was probably not recognizing the complexity of what it really takes to start up a facility like this. You know, it's a unique, one-of-a-kind application to process waste like this.
The radioactive liquid waste is stored in metal tanks that are old and don't meet current regulatory standards. The Department of Energy was supposed to have turned that waste into a solid and packaged in new steel drums for interim storage, but missed deadlines in 2012 and again in 2014. When we talk about this radioactive liquid waste, we're talking about 900,000 gallons of the stuff stored inside 3 metal containers. But it's not the fact that it's radioactive that's problematic for the Department of Energy, but what's inside it.
So this sodium-bearing waste is much higher in sodium and as well as potassium.
Here is how the Integrated Waste Treatment Unit is supposed to work. It heats up the liquid portion of the waste to the point it turns into steam, leaving solid waste behind. HEPA filters catch the harmful contaminants in the steam that's produced, and what's left is a dry material, very similar to laundry detergent. It operates very similar to a calcination unit, which used a similar process at the Idaho National Laboratory more than a decade ago. Because of the unique composition of this sodium-bearing waste, the Department of Energy had to find a solution for treating it. Zimmerman says after weighing the options, they chose the model known today as the Integrated Waste Treatment Unit. But multiple failed tests have kept the unit from operating as intended. The initial construction costs of nearly $500 million is multiplying by roughly $3 to $5 million each month.
Right now, the cost on the project is just over $700 million in total. That includes the construction as well as the testing to date.
Even the most recent test ran into problems when a scale material formed inside the unit, which could prevent the plant from working properly. Zimmerman says it's not unusual to run into problems when working with a project as new and untested as the Integrated Waste Treatment Unit. Beatrice Brailsford with the Snake River Alliance, the state's nuclear watchdog group, says she knows the difficult situation the D.O.E. faces.
You know, liquid waste is by definition harder to manage than solid waste. Just, it migrates. The tanks that are holding that waste are buried. It has to be put in a more stable form than a liquid.
While Brailsford laments the slow progress treating 900,000 gallons of liquid radioactive waste, she cautions that rushing the D.O.E. might cause problems later in the process.
It will happen when it happens. I think the worst thing we could do is try to rush it. You know, clearly the facility has gone through a whole series of glitches. A glitch would be so compounded into a really major problem if you added radioactive waste to it. So I think we just have to be patient. I think the state was right to impose a financial fine.
Patience isn't easy, and it comes with consequences. Earlier this year, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality announced it was fining the D.O.E. for missing deadlines. Zimmerman points out that of the dozen or so missed deadlines, the Idaho Cleanup Project has met close to 500 deadlines on other projects. For example, Test Area North, which ended well ahead of schedule.
Right now we're at Test Area North. You know, this was the area at one point not too long ago was the home to a large industrial complex that had 40 facilities, including a nuclear reactor. This area started in the 1950s in support of the nuclear aircraft propulsion program. for the U.S. Air Force and the Atomic Energy Commission, which was a predecessor to the Department of Energy.
Test Area North was home to the National Reactor Test Station and where the federal government had plans to build a large-scale nuclear-powered aircraft. In the mid-'80s, debris from 3 Mile Island was sent here so scientists could research the cause of the nuclear accident and prevent future reactor meltdowns like the one in Pennsylvania. Cleanup here began in 2005, a project that included destruction of dozens of buildings and removing anything contaminated with radiation. Today, you can look at Test Area North, and there are only a few reminders of its former prominence.
This area on the surface is very clean, and this is what we would be restoring the majority of the site to the same standard.
Zimmerman says he's confident that the problems with the integrated waste treatment unit will be solved and it will be up and running by September 2016. But even if it isn't, Zimmerman says he isn't ready to call it a failure and move to a plan B. Because this process is new, the Department of Energy can't even send the liquid waste to another laboratory to be treated, even if it wanted to.
Well, there are no other treatment capabilities available in the United States, and moving liquid waste is very problematic. It's probably one of the riskiest things we could do if we were even to try that.
That means even if they were to scrap plans for the integrated waste treatment unit, the department would have to pay hundreds of millions to plan and construct a new method of treatment, with no guarantee it wouldn't run into the same problems they face today.